a good quorum kind of showing up, filling in. We were supposed to start at the top of the hour, which is right now. I'm going to give it about 30 seconds or so before we go ahead and get started, just in case we've got any stragglers. And then to be respectful of everybody's time, I'll go ahead and get started here in just about a minute. Today's workshop, the webinar is on project cost management, the SAP HD overview. We're going to show some kind of specific things within hard dollar as it relates to SAP and the data that we're using between the two systems, and really what the story is between and the value between the SAP system and how hard dollar complements it a bit. So thanks for spending a few minutes with us. I think right now these phones by default are in listen only mode. We will change that though, so we can switch that around so we can actually hear any questions that you might have kind of along the way, because I'd like to keep this open. There's some material that I want to get through to kind of show you what some of the processes are. But in the meantime, there are certain aspects of the presentation that have some really kind of good meat in them for specifics, and I'd love to get your feedback and if you have any questions about the content. So hang tight. We'll get started here in about 1 minute to be respectful of everybody's time. And then what I'd like to do as well is give you a copy of this presentation, make it available through a link that you can download after the presentation. So I'll go ahead and give out my contact information after the presentation, and please send me an email, shoot me an email, ask me, and I'll go ahead and forward you the link to the presentation so you have a copy of the slides as well. So we'll get started here in about 30 seconds or so.
Right now,
all right.
Long, or do you want
to yeah, that's great. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. Again, thanks for spending a few minutes with us today. My name's Ron Babich with Hard Dollar. I'm the Senior Vice President here at Hard Dollar. I also have Shannon Corrigan, who's our Marketing Manager for the channel as well. She's here today. And I appreciate you spending a few minutes with us. What we're going to cover today is some of the specifics on some of the detail that goes between Hard Dollar and SAP. I think we're also in the process of kind of going through the unmute. So if you have questions, you can either drive them through chat, and then we may have the audio kind of working backwards here too, so you can ask questions as well. So for starters, if this is the first time you've seen Hard Dollar, or maybe the 100th time you've seen Hard Dollar, try to put the presentation together so it fits both. If it's the first time you've ever seen Hard Dollar from that perspective, Hard Dollar really manages cost and productivity from the estimate side to the progress side, and then captures all of the cost and productivity data through our project cost management system. We really kind of act as the visibility out in the field, the visibility between the systems of record is truly what value we bring to the table with SAP. So we're over here in the yellow boxes on the estimate side, also measuring progress against that estimate, and then capturing and kind of controlling and managing all the cost and productivity down here. That really starts, if you've never seen Hard Dollar before, all the way over here on the BIM side and the design takeoff side where quantities are driven initially, potentially, into the estimate where we'll build different types of budgets and estimates with that data. Then we drive that work breakdown structure and budget into the ERP system, as well as the basis for building a schedule and the basis for really measuring progress at a very detailed level. And that's some of the stuff we're going to look at today. At the end of the day, it really comes down to making sure that there's visibility between those systems of record. So I'm going to show you how some of that stuff works. On the cost breakdown side, where we really kind of focus is driving that cost breakdown structure, which is over here from the beginning, from multiple sources. So whether it's third-party databases like mining databases, Richardson's, RSMeans, Priceless, that whole breakdown structure can be built from a variety of one or more of these items here that get driven into building that cost breakdown structure. A lot of it's built from the historical aspect. I'm going to talk a little bit about that in benchmarking today, and then quotes as well. So all of those different sources so you can kind of see what drives it. From a benchmarking perspective, when we do look at that history, and this is one of the newer features in Hard Dollar, We can drill into an item to see its historical points. We can see how that item at the very, very detailed level for one activity and those resources behind it, what has been the as-built history of that particular activity. What is the as-estimated projection for that activity? What's the average, and what is the current performance of that activity? So in hard dollars world, everything on the CBS level, the work breakdown structure, is extremely, extremely finite and detailed in terms of the level of detail it would go down to. That each item that you see, which is behind there, is built up or can be built up from resources and equipment and material that drive that item. All of that data is driven and can be driven, correlated, interlaced into the schedule, which you kind of see here on the right-hand side where we see days. So hard dollar kind of creates that triangle of taking scope, schedule, and cost and ties it all together. And this is actually a pretty good screen that depicts how that detail comes to fruition all in one place. From a forecasting perspective, we're looking at managing 3 sets of budgeted data: the original budget, the current budget, and the current estimate. We also use the original budget to preserve the baseline. So while we're building that future forecast, we're also preserving the baseline at the activity detail level when applicable. We're also tracking any changes in the current budget as well, too, throughout the process. And we're using the current estimate for what ifs. So unlike on that previous screen, when we have kind of alternate scenarios where maybe there's greater duration, it's not 10 days, it's going to be 20 days because we just can't get it done in 10 days. What does that do to my crew? What does that do to my resources? How is that affected by the schedule? The outcome of that looks a little bit like this. So from an SAP perspective in hard dollar, on our side of the fence, on the hard dollar side, we're taking the original budget. If it's locked for reference, it never changes, it's there. The current budget, which we've also recording in hard dollar, and then the current estimate, the what-if analysis that drives the bottom-up forecast for each one of the activities. So you can kind of see the big difference here. It's really at that detail level, that excavation item, the embankment item. Everything's down at the work breakdown, cost breakdown structure level. And behind that are the resources, the crews, the material that drive each one of those items. Next thing I want to talk about a little bit is budget and contract changes. So hard dollar is keeping track of all the changes that may affect the budget of the contract. We're easily managing the budget that moves and the contingency drawdowns from those. We're also approving the formal approval of changes to update the current budget, and we're categorizing and annotating changes for easy searching, sorting, and filtering. So within the system, and I have a screenshot for that one, but within the system, hard dollar is taking all of those changes, which could be schedule driven. They could be driven from the ERP system. They could be driven from lots of places. But hard dollar is managing those changes that affect quantity as well as cost and tracking those. We're also giving a visual of what those ramifications are of those changes. So if I had a 20-day duration change on a single activity that drove that single activity up by $500,000, that $500,000 change would be reflected in hard dollar at the activity level. So later on we can go, well, why did our project go over budget by $2.6 million? Here are all the changes that took place within that at the, again, activity level, very detailed level. A couple things we want to do here from a cost and visibility exchange on schedule to the cost model. So if you're not familiar with hard dollar, just to kind of give you some background before I start this, hard dollar integrates directly through the API with Primavera as well as Microsoft Project. What's critical for us here is that we are driving hard dollar activities from the start and finish dates that we're getting from the schedule. That's about it. Everything else is in hard dollar. Those resources, the resource libraries, the things that drive that project are in hard dollar, other than the start and finish dates. It gives us the ability to do a bunch of stuff from that. We can create a cost model from an estimate, so we can take a P6 schedule and then create an estimate. We also can create a schedule from an estimate, so we can create the dependencies from that point forward. We can resource and cost load a schedule, which is a huge, huge thing for many organizations, and do that automatically. So once those resources were built up, like on that previous screen, we send those over to Primavera, and now we've automatically got a resource and cost-loaded schedule that we don't have to manually do, and that stays current when there's changes in the work breakdown structure. As I mentioned just a second ago, we're maintaining the structure in one centralized place, driving that to the schedule, driving that to SAP, so that there's one centralized place where that structure is maintained from a detail perspective. Also, we're being selective with what we're going to roll up and what we keep one-to-one on the relationship. In a big deal, especially, again, to bridge the gap over to the schedule side, from quantities, we're driving that percent complete calculation and the earned value calculation over to the schedule. We're also giving the ability with that, of course, to do what-if impacts on it. So from a collection perspective, there's lots of ways for us to get the data in on progress. One of them is obviously just to enter into HD directly. Another way is spreadsheet with our spreadsheet templates. And then we kind of leave the rest of it up to the outside world, so through SAP timesheets or through the ERP system directly. The results of that kind of stuff give us a lot of different data, including the quantities, the man hours, the equipment hours, and ultimately the ability to drive the earned value calculation that we just saw a second ago at the activity level. With that data, it gives us this centralized cost and productivity data. It gives us the ability to send back to the ERP system critical information that helps drive project reconciliation, the cash flow analysis, the accruals, earned value calculations, forecasting, and then some procurement detail as well. So there's lots of cost and productivity side that are data that's coming from the estimate as well as the control side that are in fact really kind of the back office, if you will, through that process. I put together this illustration to kind of give you, not to confuse everybody on the phone with 8 million things on the screen, but really to kind of put the picture together from the bottom of the bun perspective of how we're really interacting in a typical situation with all of the systems as the system of record for SAP, and then dealing with the schedule and being right in the center of that action. So if we're creating new opportunities in SAP through SAP CRM, bringing the customer information in those opportunities, turning those things into an estimate, and then ultimately creating new projects and new customers within SAP, the system of record here. Starting kind of from the top down, obviously getting the material master and pricing from SAP, the vendor master, the project numbers, all coming into hard dollar, the estimate being created from that information, quotes being generated from that, entered into the vendor PO system, and now I've got an actual project in SAP. Setting the pay items up from the work breakdown structure from hard dollar into SAP, what the current project status is, the structure itself, the work breakdown structure and the cost breakdown structure, those budget values, the original budget, the current budget, the control budget, the current estimate, all being updated. So as we change those things daily and weekly, those updates are getting sent over to SAP. The forecast is really coming, this is a little bit out of order because I've got actuals coming back down here. The forecast is actually calculated from time entry hours that are being sent over from SAP into hard dollar to generate that current forecast along with the actuals that are being entered into hard dollar and earned value. So hard dollar has the concept of earned actuals against the work that's actually been performed. So if we're doing 10 miles worth of railroad track and we've completed 50% of the man hours that we estimated it, hard dollar's earned actuals are going to estimate that work based on the man hours that were originally planned against it. We're also going to take those man hours and we're going to compare them to the actual man hours done. So we'll have earned versus burned calculations, and then pass those back over to SAP. So you can kind of see from this diagram that from the CRM perspective to timesheets to the ERP system itself, for actual tracking, HR management, equipment rates and types, those are all the data that you'd expect to stay there and drive the source data that we're going to get from SAP. And then on our side of the fence, we're going to create the estimate, drive the quotes, and then from a project controls perspective, measure progress, and then ultimately create the forecasting information. How we work specifically, let me give you kind of a little bit of insight on some of the specifics. So from a budget perspective, we'll create the work breakdown structure, the planned quantities, the budgeted cost, and the budgeted man hours. From a contract perspective, and we're in blue here, and the SAP system's here on the right-hand side, contract and sales order setup, the pay items and the quantities are going to be driven from hard dollar into contract management. On billing and pay request, same thing. As the owner wants to see the work done, what's earned in billable revenue by pay items is going to drive from hard dollar into the SAP system. We're also going to take actuals back. So as-built costs are entered into SAP and as-built man hours are entered into SAP, those comparisons are going to drive back into hard dollar so that we can put the as-builts right next to the estimate as well as the earned and the quantities completed. On the master data, that's pretty obvious as well too. Material masters are going to drive from SAP back into hard dollars, so we're going to update our price list with all the material masters as well as the vendor master information, update those lists for not only current estimates but also future estimates that are going to be calculated from hard dollar. Kind of give you a couple of interesting things that are going on in hard dollar with that. So as we enter changes as they occur, change types include budget move, budget contract changes, quantity changes. We're going to record those changes in hard dollar against those items. Here we're taking $5,000 out of one item and moving it into another. So again, once again, very detailed level. Here you see a CVS position code. There could be a phase code associated with that, the SAP account code as well in the description, and all of the contract change details down below. Very much like our job tracking with change orders, where you see why the change was made and each change recorded against that item. The change only affects the current budget when the status changes to approved. So this is a new feature for us that is in the 12.0 release that's kind of been long awaited. We've been looking to get this in for a while. Next thing I wanted to share with you was something else, which is around budget and contract changes, tracking and reviewing all changes in the project by date. So we kind of utilize some very built-in features that hard dollar has, which is our grouping and reporting feature. Up here at the top, you see that status group up here. Using this grouping, I can group all my contract changes and my change control information by pulling the status group up to the top here, and then grouping all approved and pending status changes right in the window there. I can print this out. I can also send this off to somebody else, and it's just an easy way for us to do grouping. You can also subgroup by account code and account type and all those types of things. We really utilize the platform, the architecture to kind of drive that grouping. Now the last part really is really the rational forecasting. Develop highly accurate forecasts using the best approach for each item. So we kind of go through this multiple ways. We give the option to do as-built cost to date plus our basis for an average performance, our most recent performance, and then the current estimate. The average performance is going to take the ability to utilize, if we have 2 years worth of work that's been performed on a single item, it's going to take all of the work that's been performed, our average productivity, and that's what it's going to base our future forecast on. Most recent is going to be the last entry that's into the system. So we could have 2 years worth of fantastic performance, and then yesterday or last week things were awful, and we said, well, it's going to be awful from here on out, so let's go ahead and pick that as our last, and that's going to forecast based on our most recent performance. This third one here is the current estimate, which is basically how the estimate is actually set up, or perfect world, if you will. And then something new for us that we just added in is what's called manual forecasting with notes and a revision log. So regardless of how we've done recent, how the average has been, we just don't care. We know that this is going to wind up this way, so let's manually forecast it. And that's something new that we've just added in. Choosing the forecast method fits the item, including the new manual forecast method. I just mentioned this here. You'll always see that referenced in hard dollar as it kind of notes here. When you look at the work breakdown structure register, you'll note how that item is forecasted as well. History is maintained through the changes in the manual forecast with notes, so you can actually see why and who and how we forecasted it. You'll also note that with the manual forecast, you can have total control over the forecast at the category level too, so we can sort by categories. Kind of last thing I just want to restate here is just the visibility. So we talked about creating a control budget. We talked about the measuring progress and then forecasting. All three of those at the kind of the detail really bring the visibility between the systems of record, and that's really the focus of where hard dollar's at. With that, I really want to kind of open it up to any questions. We spent about almost 20 minutes kind of going through those details. Are there any questions on any specifics on how hard dollar complements SAP, or any specifics as to how those numbers work together, or anything in general? Oh, I think I heard somebody. Hey, any questions about anything we saw today? Or comments? Okay. All right. Well, I'll tell you what I'll do. If you think of anything later, or if something comes up, shoot me a note, and I'm happy to answer. I'll make sure my contact information is available. And as we kind of gather more information and kind of simplify this as to how Hard Dollar complements SAP, we'll update that data as well. We're looking to also have like a little movie section within the Hard Dollar website with Hard Dollar SAP, and kind of little vignettes on each section, sections on the control budget, sections on progress, and then sections on forecasting, to make it really easy to understand as we move ahead. With that, I'll probably just wrap it up then and say thank you so much for attending today and going through a little bit more detail of how this works together. I'll probably do another one of these next month too, and I know your time is valuable, so I appreciate you taking a few minutes. Try to add a little bit more to it every time we get together, so we can keep you updated on how things are. And then I'd like to get your feedback as well too. So if you'd like to see anything added that you didn't see today, or you saw too much and you'd like to see a lot less, I want to hear that too. So let me know. Again, my name is Ron Babich. Thank you for attending today, and we'll talk to you soon. Take care.